All right, welcome back, and we're doing our Faith at Work series, and got a few of these under our belt, and we'll be following a similar format that we've been following. I got Neil Williamson here today. Going to interview him and let him talk a little bit about his job and his faith. And remember, as we go through these, especially you young people maybe watching, these are very good lessons to learn about life, about work, and maybe, we did this with the youth about, 5 or 6 years ago. It's been a good little while. But maybe even in listening, and even some of you middle-aged people, maybe in listening to some of these interviews and finding out what people do for a living, you may say, hey, that sounds like that's interesting to me. So, feel free to, I'm sure they won't mind talking as I interview these people. If you want to do something like Neil or Tracy or Mark or some of the other ones we've interviewed and going to interview, talk to them and say, hey, I want to learn more about that, or I may have some interest in that. So these are good for that, but also we'll be kind of gleaning some general lessons about the importance of working honestly, working faithfully, bringing your faith to work with you, and talking about some of those lessons. But first of all, glad to have you today, Neil, and
good to be here.
Talk about your work. I know you've kind of had a varied work environment over the years, but kind of under the general umbrella of education, I guess. So kind of tell a little bit about your history. I know you're a band director for a little while, and then you've kind of transitioned recently. But
for about 15 years, I was the band director, and currently I'm an assistant principal.
Okay. And where were you a band director at? I know you're at Memorial for a good little while. Were you?
Well, I was band director in 3 schools.
Okay.
First, it was TJ, which was in Port Arthur when they had 3 high schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Hardin Jefferson for a few years. And then I had a year or 2 off, and then I came back and worked in Port Arthur again at a middle school. So I guess really 4 schools, and then it morphed into the 9th grade campus, which is where I am now as an assistant principal.
Okay, so you went from band director to assistant principal. How many years have you done that? 2 or
assistant principal? This is my second. I've completed 2 years.
Year. Okay, I was thinking
I'm going on my 3rd.
Okay, I think you're finishing your 2nd year, but time sometimes flies, so I couldn't quite recall. But
it does fly.
So what? You've been doing that 2 years, and the others are band director. What do you kind of do at your job now as a assistant principal? Are you just on a 9th grade campus still? Is that right? Okay. Mm-hmm. What do you kind of deal with students? I guess deal with teachers. What?
Yeah. Well, we deal with students. Are our first priority, and teachers are also a strong priority. We also work with parents, the community, different organizations that like to come in and help out. So there's a wide variety of people that I work with. Also, of course, assistant principal, there's a lot of jobs that people don't realize that they have. It's not just when a kid gets in trouble that the assistant principal deals with it. You have to be over so many teachers or departments. You have to make sure that, teachers are doing their jobs. And following curriculum. You have to work with the administration at the district level because they're wanting to know what's going on. You have the state sometimes has to come in. So me currently, I'm over like English department, fine arts. I'm over social studies. I'm over special ed, which is a very big deal and requires a lot of attention and effort. And I'm also over another special program called ESL, which works with students who don't speak English too well.
English second language, I think. Yeah. So do you have a principal at the 9th grade campus, or do you work under the principal? Okay.
No, we have.
I don't know if you had a principal.
We have a principal, a head principal, and another assistant principal.
Okay. I didn't know if you had a principal over all the high school, and then you were assistant in 9th grade, or if you had an actual principal there. So,
right.
Are y'all on the? Just out of curiosity, are y'all on the same campus, but sort of separated?
We're next door. We have our own building, and we're autonomous. But
kind of the same campus,
but it's right next door. And so far as reporting to the state, we're one high school. So.
Oh, okay. So how did you get from band director for a good number of years there, 15 years or so you said, to transitioning a couple years ago towards being a principal, assistant principal?
I love teaching music, and I enjoyed being a band director. There were a few factors that led to me becoming an assistant principal. Never in my life did I think I would be an assistant principal.
There's so many people that say that about their job. Never did I think I would be teaching middle school students or whatever. But now,
you know, but I like to help people. I like to help in a capacity. I like helping, the teachers, and I like figuring things out. I like, analyzing things. So that's part of what led to it. Also, band directing involved a lot of travel and a lot of time. And so one of the decisions was to try and make more time to spend with family at home. And so assistant principal has allowed me to do that more than before. And of course, pay is always not a little nice.
A bump in pay. Like, you take on some more responsibilities, but some more
more
good
stress,
stuff too.
A little less time, but more pay.
What if you could sort of think in terms of being an assistant principal and doing all that stuff? What do you enjoy most about your job, would you say, and what do you kind of enjoy least? If you could
what I enjoy most is just working with teachers and students. Of course, I am an assistant principal, so I do get those troubled students coming into my office more than the ones that are superstar students. But I enjoy trying to get them to see what would be helpful for them so that they could succeed. I like helping teachers because teaching is a difficult profession, but in the end, it's worthwhile. Teachers are the type of people who run into people in public and they're like, "Oh, you remember me? I was your student, and
10 years ago,
thank you so much for what you did." Whether you thought you did a good job with that kid or not,
and you see them successful.
It's a big reward, there's that appreciation there. And so, being able to help teachers, I get to work a little more with technology in this job, so I love helping the teachers, grow and learn how to do new things so that they can help students.
I guess there was plenty of that with this coronavirus stuff, with transferring to online stuff.
Been hounding people to learn some online stuff, and the ones that were dragging their feet finally got a good dose of medicine.
What would you say you like least about, or dislike most, or like least?
There are two things that really bother me sometimes. One is it is sometimes high stress. There are some really important things, documentation wise, or just responsibilities, that sometimes they do cause me to be weary and maybe lose some sleep, and that can be really stressful. I don't like to fail, but sometimes it just happens, and I've had to learn to deal with that, and realize, I didn't get that right, but next time I'm going to get it. But sometimes you get your supervisor is going to let you know that you failed, and that bothers me sometimes. And the other thing is occasionally you run into parents that you don't feel like are really invested in helping their child, and they're more of a conflict, and they don't really want to work with you all that well, and it's kind of like, well, what can I do? What else can I do?
Yeah, as a school, you try to provide everything on a platter, and then they sort of spank it out of your hand almost.
Well, or you even
say, who cares?
You even get creative to try and help the child, but there's no buy-in, and when the parent doesn't buy in or the student doesn't buy in, it becomes difficult. And sometimes you have to have some high conflict conversations, but in the end, you have to say, well, this is what's right for the student and the school, so this is how it's going to have to be, and you hope the parent or the student will turn around
and respond. What about your relationship with your boss? I know in these interviews, as I said, with young people especially, it's important lessons to learn. I know sometimes you going through school, I remember some teachers sort of your boss, but some teachers I really didn't like, and you're like, well, I just got to do it and get done with their school year and go to the next one. How do you get along with your boss? Good.
Yeah, we get along really well. I do respect my boss a lot, and she has some things that I can learn from. She can masterfully deal with some of those conflicts I was speaking about a minute ago, and also she's helped me to learn to be a little more organized and things like that. But she also, I fear her sometimes because there's things that I need to get done, and I, like I said earlier, that's one of those things that really bothers me when I don't get something done correctly. I just feel awful about it, and it bothers me and I get upset. But she usually is like, well, just let me know ahead of time, or if you need help, you need to let us know. And she's really supportive, and even though she will get on to you sometimes, she's really there to help you, and she's been excellent for me.
And also really at the same time, I'm sure when you're successful, you feel proud that you were successful in whatever, and she's proud of you as well, which helps those situations. All right, well, that talks a little bit about your job. And let's kind of shift gears a little bit towards your faith and how your faith affects your job, how your job affects your faith, and kind of talk about those, how they compare, contrast, and interact with each other. Are there other Christians at your workplace? I know sometimes that's a challenging thing in a public setting, kind of like a school, state setting, so to say. But are there other Christians, and how is that helpful or encouraging in your interaction at work?
There's a lot of faithful Christian people at work. I would say 80%. Some are very involved in their church, and they're all different faiths, but we all, I think it helps us work as a team, and that's one of the things that our campus kind of prides itself on, is being a team and helping support each other. And I think the fact that most people have pretty strong Christian values, that's what makes it work. There's a genuine respect there, and everybody tries to follow kind of the golden rule thing, and helping the others out as you want them to help you. So it's
the attitude is, if someone's lacking, or maybe like I said, genuinely behind, the attitude is, hey, let me help you out, and kind of pull you. I know, as you say that, this is totally off the subject, but I worked 2 summers at Walmart stocking groceries, and we would each have our own aisle, and you'd be working your aisle, and you'd get to about, it was 8-hour shift, I think, but you get done with your aisle in 5 or 6 hours, whatever. Depends on if you had a lot or a little, but there was always that person or a couple people that you go over and everyone's looking and like, hey, that's all you got done in 6 hours, like, or even trying, because we would go over there sort of madly, and we'd have to finish helping them out. But so it's one thing if you try and you take a long time to finish, but it's good to have that team effort, and like you said, that helps the general environment. And I'm sure maybe some of those knuckleheads, I don't know, that may not be the right words. I was going to say sometimes it raises them up, even to say, hey, everyone else is sort of pitching in, and like you said, the golden rule, and maybe I need to jump on that train as well, sort of.
I would say that would be a true statement. There are sometimes, of course, as part of my job is dealing with teachers that aren't doing the things they're supposed to do.
Kind of cracking
just like students, and sometimes it could be, difficult. But I would say, and this might lead into a question later, but when I have to deal with that person, I really want them to know, hey, this is what we expect, and I'm here to help you. And if you need help, let me know. Just like I said, my boss does for me. So that's kind of the way we deal with that. But I mean, it is definitely nice knowing. And the other thing about working with other Christians at my job is, like last year we had a student who he didn't really take care of himself. Maybe he had some hygiene issues, and one of our teachers, who's very active in her churches, she went out of her way to bring him clothes, and and then the coach he washed the clothes for that student. And so,
Kind of
and
pitching
we
in.
let the kid take a shower in the mornings when he came to school. So, you know, it's just going, you know, you can see that Christian faith working that extra mile to help students, you know.
Help them feel comfortable in the environment.
And then I know some teachers I know one particular teacher, she'll drive to students' homes and say, hey, why isn't your child doing their work?
Oh,
you know,
okay.
so, and
So
it's,
give them some
you
accountability.
know, that comes from you know, that we're here to help you background, and that's pretty
In a
amazing.
positive way, yeah,
And when teachers or administrators or counselors, you know, do those types of things for people, it inspires you, you know, and it makes a better workplace.
What about temptations to sin in that school environment? I know as you're sort of administrator, I know you got people above you still, but you're above some people. I know there are perhaps temptations to squelch on numbers and squeeze numbers to say, well, let's massage this way to look better, or is there those type of temptations or other temptations maybe that come to mind?
Sure. I mean, you know, like I said, teaching can be stressful, and sometimes, you know, it's difficult to not cross the line where you would cause harm for somebody, not necessarily physical harm, but, you know, harm to a student's grades, or, you know, how you're always writing them up and sending them out so they're not learning anything, you know, that frustration, you know, and not working with that type of situation, you know, dealing with those type of folks can cause problems, you know, and cause you to do the wrong thing, and you're really hurting somebody and not helping them. Let's see. So, you know, some teachers could not want to give the kid a good grade just because they're not, you know, doing what the teacher wants them to do. Sometimes you just have to find a way to work with students.
Different learning styles, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some people cut corners, you know, and that's just I would say anywhere, you know. Some adults like to cut corners, and that can, you know, be a temptation. Well, I'm just gonna take the shortcut here and get through it. There's a lot of, you know, gray areas that can come up, and, you know, determining what's right or wrong, you know, ethically wise. But and then sometimes you run into people that just don't want to do anything right, and you have to deal with that. Or they want to cause dissent. A lot of you'll hear a lot of teachers tell you, you know, stay out of the teachers' lounge for lunch because you know there's a lot of gossip.
Yeah.
And there's truth to that. You know, I've been in. I never was afraid to go in the teachers' lounge, but
been in those situations before.
But you hear people say crazy things about students or talk bad about people, and you know, I think that's probably one of the bigger things is, you know, having ill will towards somebody else and realizing, well, hey, that's not what we're here for. We're here to help people.
Kind of throwing gasoline on the fire instead of trying to put the fire out. Yeah.
And especially, and this doesn't really happen at our campus, but I've heard it before, you know, just everybody talks bad about one student, you know, and it creates a clout, and, you know, you're not really helping, you know. When I think that's probably the, you know, worst temptation is where you just kind of, you down somebody and you leave them behind. And sometimes it happens from teacher to teacher, you know. There's some teachers don't get along, and you know, they cause dissent on purpose. So
try to get other people on their side or whatever.
So, you know, that's usually the type of
the rub,
things that cause problems, and you know, that temptation, and you know, having hate or malice, and rather than love and, you know, peace and
trying to contribute to the team. Yeah.
Yeah.
And work together.
Giving, right.
How, kind of the last question to kind of conclude, and you can kind of throw in the kitchen sink if we forgot the kitchen sink, but how does doing kind of your best at your job make you feel? Knowing, like, I know you've kind of touched on that a little bit, but one of the things I want people to get the point of this series, and especially young people that may be watching, is kind of the principle that doing your best is rewarding in the short term in some ways, and also in the medium to long term as well. But how does doing your best at your job sort of fulfilling, and how does that come out in the short term and the medium to long term, would you say?
Well, that's an interesting question because your work's never done. So
Yeah, as an educator.
I would say, that's kind of like, you can't just stop doing good. There's not a certain amount and then it's over. You have to keep doing it until whenever the end is. I guess that, we do, it is important, and part of the thing that the state wants us to do, and that we do with our teachers, and I do with myself, is you set goals, and you try to
achieve those goals, and
you try to find your weaknesses and make them stronger. You try to strengthen things that are already strong, and you kind of go with that. And so the reward, I think, in the end will be, job well done. I survived. I got through this, because it is hectic.
You got to retire,
and sometimes it gets really dark and the light gets really small. I think that relates in faith is, sometimes things get really dark, but the light is always going to be there. And you just have to keep working and moving towards that light, and building up yourself, working on your strengths and working on your weaknesses so that you could get there.
Yeah, and be the light, as well. Jesus talked about even a light on a hill, even if that light's far away, that light that attracts others in time. All right, anything else, or is that pretty good?
No, I think that's good.
All right, well, thanks for sharing with us and sharing about your job and about your faith. Let's close out here with a prayer. Father, I just thank for the time that I had to visit with Neil, and pray that as we go through these series in here, that folks will be encouraged and blessed, and thankful for our jobs that we have and different interests and different talents, and to be able to go forth and do different things. And thank for Neil and his efforts as an educator over the years, and band and other areas, and now as an assistant principal, and seeking to encourage those students and teachers as well, as he shared about, and trying to lead them in a good and positive direction to be successful as they grow into young adults and adults as years go forward. And just thank for his efforts, and others that do their best to encourage these students and teach these students. As you mentioned, sometimes it can be a challenge due to their maybe lack of desire, and sometimes their lack of conduct, and some other lacks maybe, but we're thankful for the perseverance that many educators and Neil and other principals and assistant principals have in trying to reach these students, and pray that you'll give them strength and perseverance as they continue those efforts, and pray that you'll bless them in those efforts. Just thankful for the blessings that we have in you day by day, and pray that we would go forth and seek to be a blessing to others as we go to love you with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves as you call us to do. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.